All right, we are going live. And
hello, everyone, and welcome to the McCain Institute for International Leadership's Peer-to-Peer Protective Project Virtual Finals. My name is Brett Steele. I serve as Senior Director of Preventing Targeted Violence at the McCain Institute, and I will be your MC today. Please join me in watching a welcome video from Cindy McCain, Chair of the McCain Institute's Board of Trustees.
Thank you for joining the McCain Institute's Peer-to-Peer Protective Project Final Competition. This is our second semester running this program at the McCain Institute, and the events of this past month have demonstrated that the threat of hate-based violence is more relevant now than ever before. When a white supremacist deliberately drove his car through a crowd of peaceful protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia, my husband called on all Americans to unite against hatred and bigotry. Peer-to-Peer challenged students from 9 universities to do just that. Catalyze movements to end hate and school-based violence. Participating teams worked through a global pandemic, civil unrest, and even a record-breaking ice storm to create and deliver dynamic campaigns on these pressing issues. We chose the top 3 teams to compete in this final for up to $5,000 in prize money. The McCain Institute is committed to advancing character-driven leadership, and I could not be more proud of the courage and tenacity these students have shown in overcoming all obstacles to address hate-based violence at a time when we need it more than ever. I'm inspired by what this next generation of leaders has accomplished in a single semester, and I know you will be too. Thank you.
We have an exciting program for you today. As Cindy McCain mentioned, 9 teams of university students spent an entire semester designing and deploying dynamic campaigns to address hate-based violence. We selected the top 3 finalists to showcase for all of you. The finalists from Arizona State University, Boise State University, and Ohio Dominican University will each present a 12-minute video featuring their campaigns and then have 10 minutes to respond to live questions from a distinguished panel of judges. Our judges will have up to 15 minutes to deliberate before awarding the cash prizes. Without further ado, I am pleased to introduce the video submission from the Arizona State University team, All Schools.
Think back to when you were in high school. Were you on a sports team? Did you get straight A's? Were you bullied? Was there ever a time when you feared for your safety as a result of one of your peers? In both 2016 and 2017, hate crimes in schools jumped 25%. In fact, just over 10% of all hate crimes are committed at schools. Threats of violence have also increased, with nearly 1,300 more in the 2017-2018 school year than in the year before. Researchers indicate that the biggest reason why schools are seeing an uptick in violence is because not enough preventative action is being taken until it is too late. Typical warning signs of violent behavior include withdrawing or isolating oneself. Studies show that 10% of adolescent youth are socially isolated from their peers, and in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, that number is only getting worse. Recognition of warning signs like isolation needs to be put at the forefront of preventative action against hate-based violence. But identifying whether or not a student is isolated from their peers can be quite difficult. That is why our team from Arizona State University's Luminosity Lab have created All Schools, a website and digital tool with the goal of helping schools build stronger communities on campus and with a message that promotes active listening and learning from student responses. Our project focuses on preventative action through the use of protective factors like building a strong social network and promoting positive engagement with teachers in a supportive school climate. We began the research process by conducting a target audience analysis of teens in grades 9 through 12. High school is the time that adolescents are finding clubs and organizations to join in order to become more involved in their schools and communities. They are typically driven towards exploration and trying new things in order to achieve personal goals that are valuable to them as individuals. It is also the time when we begin to see the negative effects of the gaps between students who are socially involved and socially isolated. Teens who isolate themselves socially may engage in increased social media use or video game play, which can become a tool that prevents them from engaging in clubs and extracurriculars. We then assessed our secondary target audience, teachers and school administrators. Most teachers truly care about the well-being of their students and want them to be actively involved in their school community. Teachers believe that engagement is an effective way to ensure that students are set up for success in the classroom. However, many schools simply lack the time and resources to implement effective assistance. We wanted to learn more about how schools are currently handling community engagement, so we sat down with Arizona Vice Principals Matt Lees from Verrado High School and Autumn Daniels from Agua Fria High School to learn more about what methods they currently have in place for assessing their students' involvement in sports and clubs, and how well the school is actually catering to their students' interests. What we found is that neither school has adequate methods of gauging their student body's general interests, whether or not a student is involved in a club or has interest in starting one. It is also clear that the administration does not have the time to organize and make sense of a bunch of data about their students that could potentially help them build a stronger sense of community and create meaningful relationships with their peers and educators. Our research also included speaking with former extremists through a connection with our mentors at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. They shared their experiences with social isolation and extremism during their school years. Here's what one had to say.
My name is Tim Zoll, and my former far-right associations was White Aryan Resistance and the Hammerskin Nation, where I was involved with violence and recruitment and propaganda. Social isolation led me to seek a tribe where I felt accepted, and once accepted, it was me and my tribe against my perceived enemies.
Our personal conversations throughout the research process gave our project a sense of purpose and allowed us to really define our mission for all schools. Our mission with all schools is
Our mission with all schools is
Our mission with all schools is
Our mission for all schools is empowering the individuals and organizations that are closest to our youth with the tools necessary to make data-driven decisions to build better online and in-person communities, reduce the risk factors related to hate-based violence, and to see what can happen by opening up the communication channels between students, staff, and faculty more broadly.
Without a strong connection to the place where these students are spending most of their days as teenagers, they can quickly become isolated. And in our conversation with Mr. Matt Lees at Verrado High School, one thing really stuck out to us, which was that students really need to have a buy-in in order to be successful at school. And so our mission is really to help schools give students that buy-in.
We aim to bring people from all walks of life to bond over shared interests. There's nothing more empowering than the knowledge that you have an entire community that cares about you.
To carry out our mission of helping both students and teachers foster a stronger sense of community on campus, our project utilizes a website with surveys and practical data visualization tools. When a student or teacher goes online to take this survey at allschoolsaz.org, they will arrive at the homepage where they will be able to easily access the survey. The individual will then be prompted to enter a unique 4-digit code given to each school to ensure that the data is collected securely. In the survey, the student will answer questions like how connected they feel to their school community, what their personal interests are, current involvement in school clubs based on a customized list for each school and their current clubs, and whether or not they would be interested in joining a club or starting their own. The student can also write in suggestions, making them feel like they are contributing to the improvement of their school's community. Then, all they have to do is click submit. It's that simple. Now let's take a look at the platform from an administrator's perspective. The data throughout this section is simply for demonstrative purposes and does not contain any data collected from our partnered schools in order to uphold confidentiality agreements. Once at the login screen, the administrator will log in with the account they are given, and once on the dashboard, they will be able to see the data. At the top are quick statistics and charts that help organize the data in a way that makes it easy to analyze. In this set of data, we have 498 submissions, and of those, 218 students are currently involved in one or more clubs. So you can see that just with a quick glance at the data, over 80 students are interested in art, yet the school offers no art club to join. And lastly, down at the bottom is all of the data with each student's name. Each category can be filtered for easier viewing. The All Schools platform makes it super easy to draw conclusions with little time commitment from administrators. Now let's analyze our post-research results. We officially launched and implemented on January 20th, 2021 with over 400 survey responses from students and staff. Our partner schools led the communication efforts to reach their respective communities and were able to direct their students and staff to the website and survey. Although we cannot speak on any specifics about the data collected through the platform, since it is to be used exclusively for educational and community building purposes by the schools, we've gained some valuable high-level insights that we can share. We received some great feedback from students, with some offering suggestions for a new club that they would be interested in starting. Some students asked for more communication about club offerings and how to join. Others suggested more discussion between students and teachers about how to improve the school's community. Taking these students' suggestions and concerns into consideration, we've come up with some constructive feedback for the platform. The survey should make it more clear that the responder can type in their own interests if theirs does not appear on the list. And we also need to make an effort with our partner schools to turn these insights into action. Another crucial piece of information the platform produces is which students feel the least included in their community, what their interests are, and how the school could better serve them. This precise data will allow schools to target their efforts in the most effective way possible and identify those who are most socially isolated. We did encounter a few challenges throughout this process, such as deciding when and how to have schools roll out our tool. We thought it would make more sense to implement All Schools at the beginning of a new semester rather than at the end of one, meaning that we had to wait a little while after its completion to do so. However, we made the most of this time by developing a closer relationship with our partnering schools and allowing them to really express any specific changes that they thought we should make to the survey to better serve their students. We spent our allotted funds for this project on building our website and tool to make it as functional as possible and to ensure that All Schools could be rolled out at the beginning of the spring 2021 semester. The funds went to purchases like website domain and hosting, and tools to help create the data visualization platform. Our purchases also helped to ensure that All Schools would be easily scalable and sustainable for the future. Our scalability and sustainability roadmap has already been put into motion. We are beginning to work with the Chandler Education Foundation to improve and implement All Schools in the Chandler Unified School District here in Arizona. We've also presented the tool to the Assistant Vice President for Outreach Partnerships at ASU, and will begin working with our educational outreach leadership to offer the tool as a free resource that can be leveraged by all of ASU's partnership school districts. Collectively, these districts consist of 270 schools, ranging from elementary to high school. To ensure the sustainability of All Schools, we're working with the Luminosity Lab at ASU to formalize the project into either its own organization or to be embedded with the university as a service offering, depending on what is decided to be able to reach the most communities and have the largest impact. All of the organizations and communities we are working closely with are key stakeholders in the iterative improvement of the platform, and we intend to listen to them to help guide the new features we add to our product. Through rapid iterations and improvements, we will continually work towards our vision of the All Schools platform, catering to the needs of the entire K-12 education spectrum, both at the school and district levels across the country, all at zero cost to the communities. That was a lot of information, so let's recap. All Schools uses protective factors to target warning signs of hate-based violence in teens such as isolation. We aim to fill in the information gaps for teachers who lack the proper resources to provide the best experience for their students. Our user-friendly tool achieves this through a positive-facing website with simple surveys for students and staff that securely collect data and present it in an easy-to-digest format. With quick observation, administrators can better understand how connected their students feel to the school community and see where improvements can be made. This is truly just the beginning. With our number of partnerships growing, we are hopeful that All Schools will continue to spread its impact to schools nationwide.
Thank you, All Schools, for that incredible submission. Now we're turning to the live question and answer component of our program. We have an amazing panel of judges, and we will give them 10 minutes to ask questions of each team. Our judges include Mark Green, Executive Director of the McCain Institute for International Leadership; Jeff Flake, former United States Senator from the state of Arizona; Nick Rasmussen, Executive Director of the Global Internet Forum for Counterterrorism; Vidya Ramalingam, founder of Moonshot Countering Violent Extremism; and Jessica Stern, Research Professor at the Pardee School of Global Studies at Boston University. Representing the All Schools team from Arizona State University, I'm pleased to introduce Alexandra Schott, Jeremy Liu, Nathaniel Ross, and Shaki Bhatt. Judges, you now have 10 minutes to ask questions of these students. I ask that we keep questions and answers brief so we can include as many responses as possible. Who would like to ask a question? Jessica, yes, please.
Thank you so much. That was so incredibly impressive. I was really blown away by what you produced. And it's always an honor to be able to be a judge at these events, because it's so moving to see what you can produce so quickly. My question for you is, how do you intend to spread this project throughout the country? You've made it pretty clear your plans for Arizona, but how are you thinking about the next steps?
Yeah, so our approach to actual scalability is to really work with our partner schools, and especially the ones within Arizona, to identify the specific problems they're facing, and then turn every problem they're facing into an operational thing on our platform that any other school more broadly can use. Our goal is, once we actually expand across the state of Arizona, we can then start working with institutions like the McCain Institute, or leverage our partnerships through Luminosity Lab, like USAID or New America, to really expand more broadly beyond that. But also, the tool is free, so anybody can actually go on it and contact us right now and use it. So at that point, it's just marketing efforts that we'll start pursuing.
Thank you.
If I can ask, I like how the platform is very simple for an administrator to use and involves very little time commitment on their part. Have you found that to be key to involvement? I'm assuming that they don't have a lot of time for things like this and are presented with a lot of projects, I'm sure, but this one seems rather easy for them to use, given all the data that they will get, so they can direct activities after that. Has that been an important part of what you've been doing, is make it very simple for administrators to use?
Yes. So one of the biggest things, even now during the COVID-19 pandemic, where teachers are really expected to go above and beyond and really do a ton for their students, we really wanted to make it as easy for them as possible to use this platform and get the most out of it. So we made it simple for them. All they have to do is type in their login information, and they can then look at all the data. Instead of having to do it manually, interviewing each and every individual student, now by using our platform, they can just have all the students fill out the survey and then have an easy to use process. During the designing phase of our platform, we interviewed a couple of student teacher administrators who have also been teachers for a number of years. So really using their feedback, we were able to build a customized tool for them. And by engaging with schools and engaging with partners who are in the industry, we hope to make it as easy as possible as them moving forward.
Thanks.
Nick, I saw your hand, and then Mark.
So just a very simple question on data collection. Anytime you have a survey, you have to, of course, have to worry about response rates and whether people are selecting out or opting out of the information providing process. How did you account for that, particularly when one of your key target audiences is trying to get individuals who are potentially at risk for social isolation? How did you draw into the survey process, which was impressive, the very people you probably most want to hear from when you're trying to gather that data at the front end?
Yeah, so based on our website analytics, a majority and nearly 100% of everybody who went to the website successfully filled out our survey. What we wanted to do with our partner schools is we did not want to take direct communication with the students. We felt like the schools had the best way to communicate directly to their students to get them to fill out the survey. And so the schools were the ones who were completely in charge of direct communication with the students. We just needed to make sure that if a student got communicated through that method and were on the website, that they were successfully be able to submit the survey, get the data, and then we could leverage it beyond there. We hope to actually implement in the next iteration a feature where we can actually allow anonymized survey responses if a student wants to give feedback but does not want to give their name, to allow to do that to happen.
Thank you.
Mark, I think I saw your hand next.
Yeah, so first off, from my perspective, the most stirring part of that entire presentation was the interview with the, what should we call them, recovering extremist? I can't remember the precise terminology, because something that I think is really important when we do presentations like this, if we're not careful, we can get caught in the abstract, right? So we throw around terms and people will sit in their homes and say, well, you know, that's somebody else's problem. And then when you hear from someone like him, you go, oh my God, I think he lives just down the street. And I think demystifying is something that's really important. So I like that a lot. How did you identify these sort of former extremists or recovering extremists to participate in the presentation and to be part of all this?
So when we were getting our research, we really did want to identify these individuals in our community who have chosen to go down the paths of joining hate-based violence groups. And so with our mentors provided by Adventure Partners and the McCain Institute who put on this program, we were able to connect with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And they have several people who are former members of the Ku Klux Klan, the American Nazi Party, or the Aryan Nation. And they were able to kind of share their experiences with us. And we were really super excited to learn from them and learn their experiences. So that way we can try to avoid those same experiences happening today. You know, we really wanted to identify the key aspects of what happened during the formative years of high school. And so that's why it was really important for us to get those hands-on experiences with people who have actually experienced those events.
Yeah, and again, from my perspective, I think it's particularly effective in the presentation because it demystifies. Right now, especially with what has happened in the last few weeks, terms are getting thrown around, and I think that was very effective. A phrase that you used in the presentation, you referred to positive engagement with teachers. What's that mean?
So we believe that through our website and the platform that we offer, we really wanted to portray a positive light and a positive facing website. And to us, that really means our wording that we use. We wanted to avoid using any specific wording around hate-based violence. And also through the survey that we offer, we wanted to make sure that we had a platform for students where they could offer suggestions and their opinions. And it shows that they're giving them a sense of agency at the school, which they're often not exposed to having. And then that consequently encourages that positive engagement with their administration.
So positive engagement to you is what? Effective communication? Oh, honest communication, maybe.
Honest and effective communication, yeah.
Vidia, I saw that you have a question.
I do, yeah. Thank you so much to the ASU students for your video presentation. I had a question about, well, basically in planning to scale this, Based on your experiences setting this up, did you experience any challenges getting schools to sign on to this? And how did you overcome that? Or if you didn't experience that as you were setting this up, as you scale, what challenges do you anticipate in getting schools to sign on to this? And how will you overcome that?
So one of the biggest challenges we faced actually was connecting with schools. We sent out tens of dozens of emails basically asking schools, are you interested in a platform like this? And got tons of no replies. And this is at no fault of the schools. They're going through a lot right now with the whole COVID pandemic. So the way we were able to initially find these two schools is we had members of the team reach out to their own former teachers they still had good relations with and see if it was something they could implement at the schools they were at, which we were able to do. And in the future, by utilizing these partnerships and kind of utilizing teacher networks, like teachers who know other teachers at other districts, that's one potential way we plan on scaling.
Any last question before we transition to the next team?
Yeah, just one more in terms of privacy. What do you have to have the students sign, or what understanding do they have in terms of the information they provide being used in only the ways that that it should be used in? What privacy concerns do you have?
For our implementation, we did not collect any data around student IDs or student emails. We only collected voluntary data, which is their names as well as their suggestions, and the schools wanted to take full control on their end of any of the privacy concerning related to any information beyond that, and we did not tackle that. Ideally, in the future, as we partner and grow more, we also become a partner and can get integrated more directly within school-based identity systems, such that we can make the process much easier. But on the technical side for our backend, we currently only use the state-of-the-art privacy protection based off of Amazon Web Services, the database, as well as all the information between the website and our servers are all encrypted using HTTPS. So on the technical end, everything is secure. The only people who have access to the data are school administrators who have verified their emails. And on the front end, we did not collect any information related to student ID or student emails, etc.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, judges, for your questions and students for your very insightful answers. I am pleased to introduce the video submission from the Boise State University SEED project.
Hello, we are the Boise SEED project. SEED stands for Students for Equity, Equality, and Diversity. Our approach offers a fresh, bipartisan approach to hate-based messages, talking ideologies across the political spectrum that engage democratic processes for violence. Our project provides high school teachers an innovating way to promote accountability culture, the idea that students do not isolate those whom they disagree with, but rather engage by encouraging a self-acceptance and belonging by the involvement in a student-led SEED club, that teachers can easily stand up in their buildings across the country. Rather than placing more responsibility and pressure on already overworked teachers, we provide easy cues and responses to combat the issues of students entering the rabbit hole of hate-based violence. Polarization has created the conditions where cancel culture dominates and tolerance remains inaccessible. Managing tough conversations is exhausting, and many teachers across the country lack the tools to create safe spaces for tough conversations across ideologies. Our tools focus on empowering youth to stand up to hate and create ambassadors of conversation and process, while our educators have the support they need to foster an environment where the interactive dialogue may take place. We created a teacher toolbox to provide these resources for teachers that make inclusivity, diversity, and by being an upstander easier. What follows is some highlights from our project.
So our project specifically is targeting that route where hate-based violence sort of starts its domino effect. Our target audience, as I said, is 14 to 18-year-olds, specifically youth with low confidence, and part of cancel culture, which we're seeing in high schools across the country, is contributing to this issue by presenting either perceived isolation or actual isolation, which pushes this youth with already low confidence into an isolated state, looking into havens online that are basically preyed upon and radicalized into these hate-based movements. So our main goals are to remove the burden from educator with preparing them on how to deal with hate when they see it developing at the root. So sustainably turning schools into barriers against hate in our community, providing teachers with the resources that they need so that they can both provide higher rates of diversity in their classrooms, preventing prejudice from developing, and then supporting youth in a peer-to-peer way to help fellow students avoid the hate-based rabbit hole, as Liz mentioned. That's really what we're seeing with hate-based violence. It's basically just a whirlpool rabbit hole that kids fall into. So we're trying to prevent that from happening in the first place. And then it also emphasizes confidence building via student clubs that we have been starting at different high schools, namely Boise High, and ensuring that people don't feel so alienated that they're going into these extremist places in the first place.
Hi, everybody. I'm Abby, and I'm about to explain some of the research and rationale behind our project. The second person that was able to primarily inform our project was Dr. Dan Prinsing. He is the chair of the Willamette Human Rights Center and also the director for the Anne Frank Memorial here in Boise. And he's done a fairly significant amount of research in topics pertaining to our project. With his help, we were actually able to refine our target audience. He's had quite a bit of experience working with youth, and he made sure that we knew that the earlier that you can introduce ideas such as ours, including tolerance, to young people, the better that they'll be able to take it and actually implement it in their lives. And Dr. Prinsing also let us know that the best way to combat hateful ideologies that already exist in people is to actually expose them to diversity. But then the third and final way we conducted research that rationalized our project was through reading several articles in peer-reviewed journals to try and understand some of the psychology behind not only children, but children who might be at risk for indoctrination with hate-based violence. And actually a former neo-Nazi has written several pieces that informed us that one of the biggest indicators of students being at risk for hateful indoctrination was actually social isolation and low confidence. Some of the tactics that we used to further our project were all informed by the research that we conducted early on in our project. So the three primary tactics that we put together were first and foremost a toolbox and a training for teachers, second a toolbox and some trainings and networking for students, and then third we had a little bit of social media engagement. So returning back to that first area for teachers, we pieced together a toolbox that had ideas for inclusive lesson plans, ideas to foster respect in their classroom, and warning signs if they thought that potentially one of their students could be indoctrinated. And then we also provided some activities that teachers could conduct in their classrooms if they thought that there was a spirit of hate beginning to be fostered in their classroom. On top of that toolbox, we actually presented this to nearly 50 local educators on a conference that we held where we informed teachers about our project and some ways that they could implement it into their classroom. In addition, we had our student toolbox, which we provided to some student seed clubs that we started in high schools across the Pacific Northwest. We now have student seed clubs in Idaho, Oregon, and California. And these student-led seed clubs are helping to try and empower their school and empower confidence in their peers and empower confidence in their peers. So it will make them less at risk for being indoctrinated by hateful ideologies. After talking to students, we learned that cancel culture and just completely shutting students out who disagreed is something that's starting to be really prevalent and really detrimental in high schools. And we help students be able to change this cancel culture into an accountability culture using the toolbox that we provided them. And then the final tactic was direct engagement through social media to try and combat hateful ideologies online. As far as strengths for the project goes, we decided to take a root level approach. So rather than trying to tackle adults who already have these hateful ideologies, we wanted to start at the source and where people are the most susceptible to changing their minds. So that's why our project actually focused on schools. We also wanted to be able to support teachers. A lot of the feedback that we got from our local educator was that teachers are really overworked and they want to be involved with projects like ours, but it's not easy for them to do so. So this is why we created such an easy to use and easy to distribute toolbox for teachers that contained, again, those inclusive lesson plans, a Quizlet with how to respond if students are using inappropriate language in the classroom. And then the greatest strength of ours was actually engaging students and youth to help build seed communities within their own schools. The huge importance for using youth was because having peers educate their other peers is a much more effective strategy than just having a bunch of adults come in and tell students that they shouldn't talk a certain way or think a certain way. So engaging students was probably the greatest strength of our project. And then finally, our measures of effectiveness. We have some Instagram metrics posted here that highlights how much engagement we had with our posts. But our measures of effectiveness actually focused far beyond social media. We realized in our own experiences that social media typically uses algorithms that only show people what they want to see. So the types of individuals who truly needed to be interacting with our message would never be able to see it because of the algorithms on social media. So rather than spending a ton of time on social media, we decided to actually have events and other things that were a little bit more effective. We presented an upstander training that taught individuals how to, rather than being a bystander, if they saw hate or hateful ideologies going on, they could actually stand up and become an upstander to this hate. After we presented our upstander training, we actually saw a 32.6% approval with people's level of comfortability with confronting and stopping hate if they saw it. And at the training that we held for teachers, we actually had almost 50 local educators who attended and were actually receiving our toolbox to be used in their classrooms.
So with any project, of course, we had some opportunities to improve. So as we saw with our social media page, although we reached a pretty fair amount of people, considering we only had a few months to run our social media, our main target audience, the algorithm does steer people in certain directions. So I think potentially something that we could try is going on different platforms that are more prevalent, ideological, like think tank spaces, where a lot of the hate-based rhetoric begins, and maybe infiltrating it in a peer-to-peer manner and giving education and just more people to diversity and preventing those misplaced prejudices. And as my colleague stated, the more people are exposed to diversity and the more people are exposed to different ideologies, the more difficult it becomes to justify having prejudices. So that's a way we can improve, is continue social media, but learn how to work the algorithm in our favor, and just the bandwidth to stand up to new student groups and connect with teachers. Continuing that in the Pacific Northwest will be very helpful.
I would like to talk about our opportunities to sustain and scale. As we created this project, we wanted everything to be able to be passed on and be able to continue to grow. We knew our time with the project was limited, but our project did not have to be limited. We really focused on creating a toolbox that could be added to and contributed to by teachers and by students for as long as they wanted to keep it going. So as long as people are still accessing and adding to those drives, they will continue to go on. We also have the student clubs in Idaho, Oregon, and California, and they are given each other's contact information so that they can contact each other and bounce off ideas. They can continue to communicate any problems that they may have and just continue that collaboration through various different schools in order to create a community and a space where they can have diversity and lots of different ideas and thoughts into their conversations that need to be had. We already have student leaders ready to take on our club at Boise High for the next year. So we hope that they can continue to find leadership and continue their program. We also created merchandise with our logo, which will outlast and have conversations every time a student wears the sweatshirt, someone sees the sticker, or someone sees the poster on a teacher's wall. They can ask them, what is Boise Seed? And it will start a conversation about our project and kind of revive it and make people think about it once again. Thank you all for listening to our presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Boise Seed Project, for your video submission. I now welcome Boise State University students, Abby Woods, Carmen Buvlovsky, and Liz Fuller to turn on your video feeds and answer our judges' questions. Students and judges, you have 10 minutes. And Vidya, I'm gonna go ahead and call on you first because I know lots of this video spoke directly to the work you did. Do you have a question for our students?
I do. I was going to raise my hand first. So thank you, Brett. Thank you to the students at Boise State. I love the ambition of this concept. And there was a term, ambassadors of conversations and dialogue, which I just loved. I wrote it down and I'm gonna mull on that. My question is really about the aim of the peer-to-peer tools that you're creating. You mentioned one of your ambitions is for students to change cancel culture to an accountability culture. How do you actually achieve that, and how do you measure that change?
Thank you for the question. Our change from cancel culture to accountability culture was mostly intended to help students be actual actors in creating their own civil community within their schools. There's not necessarily a way that we were planning on tracking and measuring this, but some of the ways that we actually gave students to empower them to actually be able to create accountability culture was helping them to realize some of the detriments and drawbacks of cancel culture, helping students realize that by canceling another student, that will just send them further into isolation, what actually makes them a much greater threat of adopting a hateful ideology. So helping students understand that what they were doing wasn't actually helping the problem was really eye-opening for them. And then after we were able to introduce this concept to them, we actually held an upstander training to both students and teachers that allowed them to come up with some productive ways to have hard conversations with their peers or their families or anyone who could be expressing hateful ideologies that were a lot more constructive than just canceling someone or trying to fight or something along those lines. Thank you.
Nick.
So Boise State students, first of all, there are two things I loved about this project. One, any project that produces swag in such a short amount of time deserves credit for coming up with branded sweatshirts and stuff like that that'll make sure that your project lives long beyond your direct involvement. I love that idea. On a more serious note, though, one of the things that I found interesting about your approach was that you took the approach that you needed to educate both a student population, but also teachers. And I wondered if one of you could speak to the maybe different challenges of engaging both of those audiences. Putting young people, teachers, in a position of educating adults is not always easy. How did you find that challenge unfold as you tried to engage the teacher population as well as the students?
Yeah, so our teacher population and our student population tactics were similar, but quite different. So we presented to teachers and students both sets of Google Drives, which is where the toolboxes for both teachers and students live. However, the toolboxes for teachers and students were completely different from one another, even though they were both working towards the same goal. So we made sure to have kind of age and authority appropriate measures for both students and teachers so they could kind of work together in a collaborative effort to completely change the school community from kind of the bottom down with students and their own peers, and then from the top down with teachers actually being able to monitor and respond to students within their own classrooms through kindness, rather than just feeling like just telling a student that's bad, don't say that, actually teaching the student like why that was problematic, or also giving them some warning signs in case a student goes beyond just saying things that are problematic and might be at risk for actually acting upon the hate. The teachers' resources were actually a lot more targeted to be actionable items that they could tackle with those students in particular who were at risk for recruitment.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mark, and then Jessica.
Thanks. So Vidya started down the path that I'd like to go, because I think what is particularly interesting about your approach is focusing in on cancer culture and accountability culture. I think that's a very thoughtful and important target that we don't often see in these types of initiatives. So therefore, we're going to hold you to a higher standard. What does it mean? How do you know what in your minds is the difference between cancel culture and accountability culture? And how do you know when you have achieved, or when a school has achieved an accountability culture?
So our biggest difference with cancel culture and accountability culture, I don't know if you're familiar with the term a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. That's basically the difference between cancel and about accountability culture. Cancel culture just completely isolates and views students as unchangeable. They're set in their ways, they're bad people. Accountability culture approaches a much more active and positive approach that actually takes a lot more effort. Rather than just cutting someone off, you take accountability with helping that person and helping your community actually learn through and grow through some of the ideologies that might be present just based on that student's home life or whatever they've been around in past. It helps them actually have a path to getting out of hate rather than just being set in their ways and further isolated down the path to hate. Thank you.
And Jessica, I believe you were next.
Yes, I am also very interested in your focusing on cancel culture, and I've been working a little bit with somebody named Karen Stenner, whose work you may be interested in. She's found that 30% of populations around the globe, everywhere, at least 30%, is what she calls authoritarian. They're people who cannot bear diversity, and that means diversity of thought. It means diversity, ethnicity, race, and so on. And I'm listening to you, I'm thinking cancel culture is a form of left-wing authoritarianism. That's how, I'm wondering if you see it that way. And anyway, that's what I was thinking about listening to you. Your very, very impressive presentation.
Yeah, I think that as we talk about cancel culture, it almost seems like we're just isolating people and we're just saying you don't fit with our thoughts. So instead you get to go over here and you don't get to participate anymore. And that's definitely kind of like an authoritarian thought. We never particularly talked about that. We've mainly just focused on not wanting to isolate individuals who may face this and instead wanting to bring them into the community and kind of educate them and help them understand why some of the things they say or think may be problematic and educate them on different worldviews, on diversity, just to encourage education instead of isolation. Thank you.
Senator Flake, do you have any questions for this team?
Yeah, just a question about sustainability. Obviously, it's a great project. Can it be sustained once you innovative students are gone from the scene? Will these schools be able to continue? Is that, I know that, yeah, you've got swag. That's great. that helps keep it alive for a while. But it's a very ambitious project. And what else have you done specifically to ensure that it's sustainable?
Thank you so much for that question. I can take that. So that was extremely important to us. Obviously, our whole theme of our project was planting a seed of growth, planting seeds of interactive dialogue rather than shutting it out, and approaching these conversations with curiosity rather than shutting people down. So as we said in our presentation, we ensured to spread Boise Seed Clubs across the Pacific Northwest to 4 different high schools specifically. So we provided them with, as you said, the swag to continue. So as Liz said in our presentation as well, every time someone sees our logo, that is revived. It encourages curiosity to ask, what is that project? What is that about? And it also provides opportunity for grassroots clubs full of the next generation of students that involve freshmen in high school and things like that. So it's really involving the youth at these high schools where these issues begin and encouraging diversity and things that prevent prejudice from forming. Thank you again for your question.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, judges and students. Our last video submission today comes from the Ohio Dominican University Altogether Human Project.
The Altogether Human Project is a peer-to-peer training program that moves college students to action by empowering them to combat hate-based violence and hate speech against the LGBTQ+ community. The program takes campus resident assistants, also called RAs, and student leaders through a 3-part training series designed to help college students experience the 3 C's of being human: show compassion, seek connection, and celebrate our differences. With the Altogether Human Project, RAs are trained to deliver short, 20-minute interactive sessions to residents through community programming. For me, the Altogether Human Project proves that kindness has real power. What I know for sure is that by being human, we can make a positive impact on other people's lives. Compassion, connection, and celebration are core concepts, and they're crucial in helping make our society and world a better place. The Altogether Human Project brings everyone into the conversation, and best of all, emphasizes that we're all together human.
The research around LGBTQ+ and hate speech or hate violence was simply stunning. It really reinforced for us how important this product really is. The Altogether Human Project is about a sense of belonging, a feeling of camaraderie. We all seek meaning and significance, and this project helps college students find their way back to being altogether human.
When I think about this project, it's about creating a revolution around compassion, celebration, and connection. If we redirect one person's thoughts or actions of hate, we've succeeded.
The program is turnkey, providing everything that RA needs to implement an impactful 3-part program for residents, delivered face-to-face or virtually. The 3 sessions are interactive, engaging, and honest. The program provides a solution for RAs who are required to facilitate community engagement programs with residents while addressing a real need to educate college students about hate-based violence and hate speech directed toward members of the LGBTQ+ community. The target audience was the inactive population of Ohio Dominican University's student community who oppose hate-based violence and hate speech against members of the LGBTQ+ community, but are not proactive in their efforts in raising awareness regarding this topic. This audience served as a test pilot for the Altogether Human Project. Our goals for this educational program are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. As you can see, we projected that at least 50% of students would agree that their awareness of hate speech and hate-based violence directed toward members of the LGBTQ+ community would increase after experiencing the program. We also projected that at least 50% of students would feel an increased confidence in their ability to act against hate speech or hate-based violence. And then lastly, 75% of students would recommend this program to other students after experiencing the program. When it comes to our secondary research, our research supported the importance of tackling hate-based violence and hate speech against the LGBTQ+ community. Hate crime incidents against LGBTQ+ members are increasing. During the same time, the number of Americans aged 18 to 34 who are comfortable interacting with members of the LGBTQ+ community dropped from 63% in 2016 to 53% in 2017 and to 45% in 2018. And then lastly, social media also plays a role when it comes to the lack of knowledge that students have regarding hate speech and hate-based violence directed toward members of the LGBTQ+ community. Research shows that students spend 6 to 9 hours on social media per day, yet have limited knowledge of the resources and initiatives they can be involved in to support the LGBTQ+ community. For our primary research, we distributed a 10-question survey to college students at ODU and surrounding college campuses and received 65 responses. The survey gave us more insight into the knowledge and perspectives that our target population had surrounding this topic. For example, as you can see, a few key statistics that were showcased in our data was that 60% of respondents stated that they see or hear hate speech or related sentiments 1 to 4 times weekly. 92.31% of respondents stated that they believe they have a role in preventing hate-based violence, and then 96.88% of respondents stated that they see or hear hate speech or messages against it on social media. When asked how students can impact hate-based violence and hate speech against members of the LGBTQ+ community, a couple of the suggestions that students gave included going out and learning what is considered hate speech, such as microaggressions, and learning how to combat them, and educate ourselves and urge others to do the same and keep fighting for change both on a small and large scale. Our strategy was to develop a product that enables RAs to host community programs with residents. Tactically, RAs are supplied with a turnkey program that they can use to educate students and facilitate conversations around sensitive topics. Embedded in our strategies and tactics are a few simple truths. Students look to RAs for support and guidance. RAs are on the front lines of helping college students recognize their humanity and the role they play in creating an accepting community. This program is meant for everyone. It's meant to help everyone in our community feel compassion, connection, and celebration for who they are. The program is intended to stress the importance of what it means to be human and realizing that regardless if we have differing opinions, goals, and dreams, together, we are still altogether human. And then lastly, by creating this safe space to have difficult conversations, we draw people in rather than push people away. The first part of the Altogether Human project is compassion. We know that compassion is comprised of empathy plus action, and that radical compassion goes a step further and takes us out of our comfort zone, like Tony McAleer discusses within his book, The Cure for Hate. The Take a Walk in My Shoes activity serves as a catalyst to help students understand the importance of showing compassion to one another and walking in the shoes of someone who has experienced hate speech and hate-based violence. The scenes depicted are real life and illustrate what it might be like to experience hate speech or hate-based violence just because of who you love. Next, we tackle human connection, or that all-important feeling that you belong to a group and generally feel close to other people. Scientific evidence strongly suggests that this is a core psychological need, essential to feeling satisfied with your life. Many members of the LGBTQ+ community feel alienated from friends or family and are at risk for depression and suicide. Within the connection activity, students are introduced to the invisible barriers that may impact the way we view our peers and perhaps cast a shadow on the connection that we do have with one another. It allows for an immersive way to think about what promotes or prohibits connection with one another, especially those who identify as LGBTQ+. And lastly, students are able to celebrate by letting go of their biases and celebrating differences. Focusing on what we do have and celebrating who we are right now keeps us focused on appreciating the good in all of us. This exercise allows students to critically think about society's perceptions surrounding the LGBTQ+ community and hate speech and hate-based violence. It also serves as a symbol of unity and freedom by letting go of their past viewpoints and/or worries, and for celebrating what is ahead as a collective unit. The Altogether Human Project program was test piloted among 14 students at Ohio Dominican University. The students were juniors and seniors, and the majority lived in on-campus residence halls. The pre- and post surveys were administered to the test group, and these survey templates are housed on the website and available for future reference. Discussion questions are detailed at the end of each exercise in order to stimulate meaningful conversations. Residents are instructed to open their social media and share something that they have learned, along with the Altogether Human hashtags to help spread awareness. Sample social media posts are also available for resident assistants to utilize in order to inform students and faculty about the Altogether Human project. Prizes are provided on the Altogether Human website for purchase. And then lastly, because finding creative materials to put on display can be difficult, we have provided bulletin board supplements for dorm decor that can be found on our website for resident assistants to use. Given that this is a product and not a social media campaign, sample posts were developed, but an actual social media campaign was not undertaken. This is an area where a university that's implementing the Altogether Human project can leverage. When it comes to adapting activities and messaging to work in a face-to-face or virtual format, this was very challenging yet rewarding. Being able to provide materials in all formats will allow this program to have more reach. These approaches can always be enhanced. Secondly, when it comes for ways to engage commuter students, following the guidance of our peer-to-peer protective program advisors, the Altogether Human project was developed as a niche program for a residential student population. An expansion opportunity would be to adapt the program to reach commuter students. And then lastly, when it comes to cost per student, depending on how many students participate in each activity and whether or not the resident assistant decides to facilitate each activity in person, costs could range anywhere from approximately $1.50 per student to $15 per student. Again, it solely depends on how much the college or university charges for printing fees. And when it comes to the purchasing of merchandise, that decision will be up to the college or university and can easily happen through our selected vendor, the CAM company. The theme of being altogether human and the 3 C's of being human, compassion, connection, and celebration, are universal to the human experience. The theme draws students into a conversation and creates a dialogue. It invites individuals into the discussion with a non-judgmental, inclusive approach. It's edgy, current, and relevant in today's hypercharged political and social climate. When it comes to the scalability of the program is turnkey and can be utilized on any campus, regardless of size or location. All materials needed are accessible through the website. And then lastly, the program fills a gap in what's currently available to support RAs. In a search for potential competing products, few existing tools approach the topic of LGBTQ+ inclusion in a way that draws college students into the conversation. By framing the discussion around our humanity, the program becomes something that can be used anywhere and on any topic, including faith-based campuses like Ohio Dominican University. The emphasis on being human and treating each other with respect and kindness is what the Altogether Human project is about. So if we all could just make a commitment to show compassion, seek connection, and celebrate our differences, just imagine how much better our world would truly be. Thank you.
Thank you, Altogether Human Project, for your video submission. I invite Ohio Dominican University students Alexis Young, Kylie Reisinger, and Vivian Nanachetam to turn on your video feeds and answer questions from our judges. Judges and students, you have 10 minutes. Who would like to start? Vidya, go ahead.
Thank you so much to the ODU students. I think it's such an important mission, so thank you so much. I had a question about your choice of subject for the tool, RAs. Why choose RAs in particular? What are the unique opportunities of working with RAs to fulfill your mission? And what are some of the challenges that you might anticipate, especially as you're planning to scale this?
We chose RAs because as someone who has lived on campus for all 4 years, I know the impact they can have on students. And also, every residential campus has RAs on their college. And also, RAs are the guidance and support and role models that students seek when they come to college. And if we can have RAs teach and show this support and show the 3 C's, they can make a real impact and change their mindset. Thank you.
Other questions? Nick.
So first of all, it's a terrific framework, the way you kind of organized the kind of themes for the project you created. You made it in a way that's very packageable And I could imagine an RA who didn't even really have much experience with these kinds of sensitive issues, kind of having something that we ready-made that could help them understand how to confront these issues. Here's what made me a little bit nervous. Anytime you're giving someone training tools or a toolkit to try to deal with something very sensitive, you can predict certain things, but things can go off script pretty quickly too, particularly when you're talking about very sensitive issues of the sort that you're talking about, where people are being discriminated against, maybe even being potentially the victims of some form of violence. How did you account for the fact that your target audience, the RAs, and I love that answer, I think it's the right answer. How do you account for the fact that they may not be equipped to deal with everywhere one of those conversations or encounters could go? Could they turn to other resources, professional or university-based resources that could help get them out of a jam, if, as it were, if some of these conversations could go in some really, really difficult directions? That's a good thing, but it's also a challenging thing. I just wondered how you accounted for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's definitely something that we had to consider when creating this project. So therefore, when creating the 3 Cs, we understood that this was a very sensitive topic. So that's why we wanted to create a package that not only included a scripted outline of actual scripts that RAs are able to utilize when facilitating these meetings, in addition to other resources that we have included within each module. And again, because we framed this conversation around our humanity and stressing the importance of what it means to be human, we wanted to create an authentic and safe space in order to stimulate these non-judgmental and non-threatening conversations on the college campus. Because again, these are our future leaders who are going to bring our future together.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jessica.
Thank you so much. That was a very impressive presentation. I'm curious about whether you thought about the possibility that promoting tolerance among the intolerant could backfire. I mean, I guess it's somewhat related to Nick's question. There is some research suggesting that. And I wonder if you thought about actually testing the result on people who identify as prejudiced, as opposed to random people. I mean, people who are already aware of the dangers of prejudice maybe rejoice, they celebrate differences. But I'm wondering how this would work, and if you could try to test this on people who self-identify as less tolerant. And I realize I'm asking you a tough question.
Yes, at this time we have not tested our program on those who identify more as intolerant, but as Alexis said, we went out of our way to create our program in a way that allowed for students and participants to not be pushed away. We were very mindful in terms of our messaging, our wording, how we created our modules in a way that allowed for open dialogue. And as Tony McAleer had mentioned, he's a former white supremacist. He had mentioned that one of the things that he found was most important was the idea of bringing people in and not pushing them away when it comes to these important dialogues.
Mark.
Thanks. Yeah, I also was very impressed with the presentation, and even quite frankly, how it's named. Altogether Human, I think is very thoughtful and clever and well done. So building on what Jessica is saying, so there's also the issue of how you identify, how people self-identify as being less tolerant, right? So you go out and you say, okay, all less tolerant people, please come forward. We'd like to work with you. Well, no one's going to say, oh, here, call on me, call on me. How do you sort of navigate that to, in one sense, identify the target audience that you've laid out, which I think is a very good one, but not require people to say, yeah, I'm a bad person, I think narrowly. I mean, how do you actually get that so that you've got a good target audience, effective target audience to work with, and to be able to measure the effectiveness of the program.
Yes, no, I definitely agree. So actually what we did, it's actually included within one of our modules. It's called the in or out, backward and forward module, where students are actually asked a series of questions. And so if that question does apply to you, you step forward or step backward. So again, it's a really strategic yet safe way of kind of what you're referring to, identifying those people who, are saying, I'm intolerant, right? And then again, when actually measuring that impact, we actually have provided pre and post assessments for the RAs to distribute so that they are able to evaluate the impact that this program had on their students and whether or not the program changed their overall behavior.
Good, very good.
Senator Flake, do you have a question?
It was just follow on to Mark's, just assessing the impact, but I think it was just answered by the last answer. So thanks.
Any other judges? Do you have additional questions? Vidya?
Can I ask one more question? I noticed at the end of the presentation, you mentioned that this is easily scalable to cover other forms of hate, not just against the LGBTQ+ community. And so I'm wondering, in order to scale this to cover hate against other communities, whether religious communities or people of a particular racial background, what would need to change and what can stay the same? How much of the curriculum is entirely usable in its current form, and what's specific to particular communities?
I would say there are many different facets of our initiative, of our program, that allow for modification, specifically our activities. For example, our Take a Walk in My Shoes activity. It's a great activity that can be swapped out to be geared towards a particular issue. Right now it's for LGBTQ+, but in the future, it may be adapted in ways to fit those other issues that we're facing by changing the characters in which we're telling the stories. We can switch those out. There are just many different aspects of our program that allow for modification, and specifically because it is based on activities and sessions, those themselves are easily changed and turned in order to fit a particular issue. At this time, I would say that a large percentage of our project is primarily focused on the LGBTQ+ community, but there is definite room for change and modification and growth.
Thank you.
All right, please join me in thanking and congratulating all three teams on their strong performances today and hard work all semester long. The judges are going to step away onto a separate conference line to deliberate for up to 15 minutes. While they deliberate, we will share some more about the work we are doing at the McCain Institute, as well as information from another team that deserves honorable mention as they could not be here with us today. If you step away, please be sure to rejoin us no later than 15 minutes from now for the announcement of the awards. While our distinguished judges deliberate, we wanted to take a moment to highlight other timely preventing targeted violence programs at the McCain Institute. If you like the Peer-to-Peer Protective Project, you're going to love Invent to Prevent. Just this month, the McCain Institute, in partnership with Adventure Partners and Credence Management Solutions, have launched Invent to Prevent, a national competition amongst universities. In this competition, teams of students are challenged to design and implement innovative products, tools, or initiatives to prevent targeted violence and terrorism. But if you think this sounds too familiar, here's how it's different. Not only will these university teams be competing for $9,000 in awards like we're giving out today, Invent to Prevent will also feature a newly designed curriculum, giving students access to advice from subject matter experts, the opportunity to receive scholarships in pursuit of terrorism-related studies, and the option to enter into a one-year sustainment program to further implement their projects post-competition. Follow along with us as the 25 teams begin to kick off the competition at Invent to Prevent on Facebook and Twitter. We're extremely excited for this new iteration of this program. We will also be replicating the peer-to-peer protective project model in France this semester. So we'll have 25 universities competing in Invent to Prevent and another 4 universities in France. Another project in our Preventing Targeted Violence line of effort is the Preventing White Supremacist Violence program. This project is a groundbreaking policy development partnership between the McCain Institute and the Center for American Progress. This project fills a clear but narrow gap in the current patchwork of efforts aimed at the growing problem of white supremacist violence. Together, the McCain Institute and the Center for American Progress are creating a comprehensive policy blueprint that is informed by impacted communities and translates their ideas into an actionable policy agenda for the incoming Biden administration and Congress. Leveraging both the McCain Institute and Center for American Progress's national security expertise, bipartisan ties on the Hill, and strong connections across stakeholder communities, this project aims to build a broad coalition of support that will drive legislative action to counter the rising threat of white supremacist violence in the United States. And our final project for preventing targeted violence here at the McCain Institute is the Prevention Practitioners Network. The McCain Institute, in partnership with the Anti-Defamation League, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, is building a Prevention Practitioners Network. This emerging national network of interdisciplinary professionals is dedicated to preventing targeted violence and hate-based violence and their impacts within the United States. This network will both increase the efficacy of locally based prevention frameworks and programs and expand referrals to qualified professionals throughout the country. In creating this network, we are establishing a community for interdisciplinary professionals by hosting intensive workshops to address common design challenges for their program and to support their conversations across organizations as they learn how to traverse ethical dilemmas, navigate logistical challenges, and much, much more. Additionally, we are developing a program framework that will help new organizations as they come to this mission and as they work to prevent targeted violence get up to speed even faster. Lastly, we will be developing an asset map of all of the organizations that are willing to accept referrals for targeted violence and terrorism across the United States. We hope you will join us for future McCain Institute and Preventing Targeted Violence programs.
As online gaming platforms continue to exponentially grow in popularity, hate-based violence has an even greater opportunity to reach people. These platforms can offer ample opportunity for hate groups to reach unsuspecting consumers in an environment where their guard may be down. One Up Against Hate is a tool for parents and gamers alike to use to educate themselves on techniques to diffuse these types of interactions. Check out our website or follow us on social media to find out more.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This was a very tight competition with strong entries from all three teams. I am pleased to introduce Mark Green, Executive Director of the McCain Institute, to offer a few closing remarks and announce the awards. Take it away, Mark.
Great. Thanks, Brett. My good friend Jeff Flake, both of us having served in public office, we have judged a lot of competitions in our careers. I'm from Wisconsin. I've judged milking contests, believe it or not. But in all seriousness, I don't know that there is a contest that I've been part of that is more important or more timely than the competition here today. With the horrifying scenes of violent insurrectionist protesters storming the Capitol January 6th, not so very long ago, still fresh in our minds, you know, I think all of us are asking ourselves, where do we go from here? How can we restore America's moral leadership and the ethos that we all hold dear and we've always believed separates the U.S. from so many other parts of the world? Well, what we can say is, looking back on our country's history, it is also clear that one of our foundational values is resilience and resiliency. And maybe that's something that we can point to and look to right now, because it's in times like these that we as Americans must recommit ourselves to addressing the simmering intolerance, division, and distrust that has brought our democracy to the brink. The violent actions on the sacred grounds of the Capitol remind us of the consequences of weaponizing half-truths and spreading misinformation. It reminds us that words matter and that programs like the ones our students presented today must be part of building a more resilient America and pointing to a future path to help us reclaim that which we hold dear. John McCain called on all Americans to unite against hatred and bigotry. And I could not be more proud of these teams for answering that call and enlisting their communities to do the same. To the participating teams, you demonstrate what is possible when we speak up, when we do our part to end hate-based violence. Even in the midst of a global pandemic, and especially during a time of political unrest, audiences are hungry for positive strategies to reduce violence and heal our wounds. I commend all of you for your commitment and service to a cause greater than yourselves, for applying your innovative thinking and your creativity to what is a challenge that we all know is terribly important in these days. You are well on your way to being the character-driven leaders that this country needs right now. Regardless of the results of this competition, which I promise to get to and announce just shortly, I hope that all of you will continue to build on your efforts both on and off campus. I hope that you'll use this competition and the prize money that we're about to award as a springboard to take your campaigns to the next level. I had mentioned in our session when we were deliberating, this is now the second time I've been involved in this contest. And one of the aspects of it that creates the greatest sense of optimism for me is that there's no duplication. It tells me that we have lots of smart young people with good ideas. We have multiple tools and multiple paths. There are ways to make a difference. And we're seeing it today in these contributions and those that we've seen before. So I can tell you that all of us found the judging difficult because these were excellent presentations, but we all came away very hopeful and very optimistic because we do see so much hope and the presentations and the tools that you've developed really are going to make a great difference. So, these are challenging times, as we all know, right now on the world stage and on the American stage, but you are helping to point that path forward. And so we commend all of you and really encourage you to double down and to reach out and to talk about what you see. And again, each of these presentations is creative and in offering unique tools that I think can make a difference. Brett, shall I proceed?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, so without further ado, the McCain Institute is pleased to award $1,000 to Boise State for its presentation. Brett, you're holding it up there. I think all of us thought that the concepts of accountability were moving to an accountability culture were thoughtful and creative and really do point to an innovative approach. So I personally commend Boise State for its really thoughtful approach to this. I don't know if there's any other observations that the other judges wanted to offer quickly on Boise State. I can say again that these were a tough call for us, but we were very impressed with some of the unique concepts and tools that Boise State brought forward. Okay, well, let me move forward. We are delighted, the McCain Institute, to award $3,000 to Arizona State University for its All Schools initiative. I would say the judges were particularly taken with the scalability that the ASU proposal offers. And obviously, we know that scalability and sustainability are very important right now. There isn't time to waste, and I think what Arizona State students have put together offers a tool that can make an immediate difference and can go to scale. And so, of course, that means, and it is my great pleasure to announce that we are awarding $5,000 and our top honors to ODU for its Altogether Human proposal. I will say that I was particularly struck by the honing in on the role that RAs can play and must play. And that I think offers great potential. But again, I would say that each of these proposals offers very strong elements, characteristics. And so we think that with each of these proposals today, you are pointing the way to the future. And we hope that you will take today's competition as well as the modest prizes that we're offering and take it to the next level. There's a lot of work to be done. So congratulations to all of the teams. We cannot wait to see what your campaigns do next. So my gratitude to all of our judges, but particularly my gratitude to the students who are represented here today and all of the students who have participated in this very important competition. So thanks to all of you, and Brett, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you everyone for joining the virtual finals of the Peer-to-Peer Protective Project, sponsored by the McCain Institute and implemented with Adventure Partners. Congratulations to all of the teams for your hard work this semester, and especially congratulations to Ohio Dominican University. It's well-deserved. As a former RA myself, I'm thrilled. We are excited to see how these programs continue to grow and evolve over time, and we look forward to keeping up with you. Like Mark said, thank you to our distinguished panel of judges. Thank you to the students. Thank you to Adventure Partners for making this program such a success over the course of the semester. And thank you to our team at the McCain Institute for putting this event together. That is all. We look forward to seeing you next semester in the Invent to Prevent program. Goodbye, everyone.